You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I'm your host, Kathy Biasi, and I'm an holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. On today's show, we are taking a deep dive into the fascinating world of saliva. And as you will come to understand, our saliva is the unsung hero of our health. From what it does to what it can indicate, you will be amazed at what you will learn from the show. And to give us the goods on saliva, our guest today is Dr. Patti Milligan. Dr. Milligan has been in the nutrition field for 40 years. Her work and passion in the field of neuroscience of taste has led her to the field of saliva research and exploring the why we like certain foods versus others. Working in both the clinical nutrition and integrative medicine natural foods field, Patti brings a unique blend of clinical, educational, holistic, consumer, and PR experience. For the last 20 years, Patti has led the high-performance nutrition program, optimizing and impacting brain and body performance for global business executives and their teams. Her latest venture is founder of Renewal Kit for Travelers, a travel immune and well-being nutrition kit to take when you fly based on her saliva and immune resilience doctorate research. Her career focus shifted to performance nutrition and investigating how salivary research holds a key to nutritional resilience. Travel is a passion, and she loves exploring, especially in serving others in capacities of compassion and basic needs fulfillment. You will see her volunteering with seniors as well as utilizing her nutrition skills to help with children's cancer charities. Patti is also the author of Children's Nutrition and Story and Gardening Journal, Why is Shirley Unusual? Inspiring school gardens and kids to thrive eating fresh fruits and vegetables. I learned so much from talking to Dr. Milligan today, and it was fascinating information. We talk about the key functions of saliva, how we can increase our saliva output, and how air travel impacts saliva. It's very interesting how air travels impacts our saliva, and how we can counteract this impact. When you understand what happens when we travel, and just by doing a few adjustments to our travel plan, it's quite amazing what we can do to protect ourselves during travel. We will be back in just a few moments to speak with Dr. Patti Milligan.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub, everybody. Our show has been pre-recorded, no opportunity for calling in. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC. Please do follow us for all the upcoming shows, wonderful tips and tricks when it comes to health. We'd love to have you on board. Dr. Milligan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's we've connected a while back on social media. I saw something and I thought, this is a topic talking about saliva. This is a topic that we have not covered. And as we were talking off air, I specialize in the area of gut health, so I understand saliva from that point of view, oral biome. But reading papers that you've sent me and going in, into the research. The topic of healthy saliva is something that I think we all should know about. So that's my little blurb for you. And now the show is yours. So welcome to the show,
Great.
Dr. Milligan. And maybe we'll start off by getting into your history, how you ended up
Sure.
in the saliva game.
Yes. Well, it's as I'm sure many people and many of your listeners, none of our career paths are straight lines, right?
No, they certainly
And
are not.
and I had been a clinical dietitian, and I'll come back to this. This is how I started my career 42 years ago, working in hospitals, working with patients. I did pediatric oncology, so little kids going through cancer treatments, heart transplant, and burn unit. And so right away, hopefully the liveliness you can see
Very
on
diversified.
nutrition impact. Yeah. And then I scooted over and kind of did more functional nutrition when I got associated with a healthy grocery store. So I did that work, and that led me to working with executives in what I call high performance nutrition, utilizing the concept of eat this, feel that, and perform like this. So, in other words, which I know you're very akin to, nutrition being something you can eat for better sleep, for lower anxiety, for increasing your gut microbiome in a very pleasant way. And so all of that way was something I was doing with high level executives globally around the globe. And then it was from that the feedback of many of the clients were, I can do high performance nutrition at home. I can actually do high performance nutrition on my job. It's when I travel that gets me kind of wonky, or I can't
Just
stay on the program, if
it's
you
a
will.
hard 180 from where I want to be.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, then it got me listening to, like, what does it take for an executive to be able to travel well, if you will. And that led me into saliva work. Is crazy because I had a French professor who said, because I wanted to study taste buds. I felt if I could understand why people like what they like and what they like that they don't like, maybe I
Fair.
could have organized that. And he said to me, sweetheart, you can study taste buds till you're blue in the face. It's all about the quality of saliva. And I had thought, oh my heavens, I have been in this field for so many years and no one has talked to me about saliva that way. So that pursued down the portal of saliva. And oh my goodness, there's so many silos of saliva research out there. And so that's what I'm excited. Thank you for honoring this topic, because I think it's going to be what they call liquid gold in preventive nutrition and medicine, because there's a treasure trove of biomarkers in there that we're just uncovering what they can do. So anyway, that's what led me down the path.
Well, the nose and the mouth are our first contact with the outside world. It's always looking back thinking, yeah, that makes so much sense. But the beauty of that story, and it's something that I tell my kids all the time, get out there and expose yourself, because you never know who's going to change your life. And so this
Yes,
professor of yours changed your life, and that's a great story
yes,
in and of itself. So let's get into the
yes,
meat and potatoes of what we're talking about,
sure.
saliva. So
Yes,
I know about saliva more from an oral biome,
yes,
preventative for teeth sort of thing, but not in depth, and that's for sure. So this is a very selfish show on my part. It's going to
sure.
educate me as much as it's educating everybody else. Um, let's go through, if you were teaching the ABCs of
Yes,
saliva, let's go through what you
yes.
would tell everybody are the key functions
Okay,
of saliva.
sure. That's a great spot to start. So saliva, interestingly enough, we're juicy. In fact, as a moment, I hope everyone will take a moment to just assess what's going on in the mouth. And in doing that, I think it's kind of a little bit of trivia, but to me, it's so impactful. We produce 2 liters of saliva every single day.
Wow.
And in that, we recycle 1 liter of it. And I think what that means is then it becomes messengers for the rest of the body. So saliva is produced by 3 glands in the mouth. And I'm sure, many people probably know the mandibular is one. There's saliva glands right under our throat and right at the top, kind of at the palate side of it on the mouth. And saliva is stimulated, as you mentioned, because the nose and the mouth are the first interactions with the outside world. So saliva gets stimulated by smell. So something I always like to do is, if you want to close your eyes and imagine that it's a cold, chilly, windy day, probably not so different from today. And you go by a bakery and they're pulling out a delicious apple pie. And you open the door and you take a big old whiff. Right then, and even now for your listeners, I bet that some are producing more saliva because that's how impactful it is. It's geared to the hard wire of our survival side of the nervous system. And why that's so important is saliva is released when we're in the side of the nervous system, which is all about rest, relaxation, digest, and rejuvenation. So it's really linked to the resilience of our body. And so the first aspect of saliva that's so critical is to understand what your salivary flow is. Are you rich and juicy all day long?
Should you be?
Well, you know what? Actually, it's a bit of a teeter-totter because one side of the nervous system that I think we're all very aware of is the fight or flight system. It's the system of high alert when we're walking into a room where we don't know anybody. And so our nervous system goes on high gear to make sure that it's safe for us. And in that, it sends a signal to the glands in our neck. Oh, slow down saliva. We got a bigger issue going on here. And then we slide, or as the researchers call it, oscillate into the side of the nervous system before we eat, before we go to bed. That's all sides of the nervous system. That's what they call parasympathetic. Or another way to look at it is a nervous system has a teeter-totter, 2 sides. One side is fight or flight, which is gas on the body to move forward and be alert. And then the other is break, where it's like, let's take a chill pill. Let's just take a moment here so we can assess what's going on in the body. So that is very critical for saliva, is what side of the nervous system are we engaged on? Number 1, saliva flow is key, as I mentioned. Number 2, as you mentioned, it is so critical for oral care. And there's a 1-to-1 relationship between the level of saliva and our tooth decay or skin around our gums called gingivitis can kind of jump into the picture when our saliva has been poor and not flowing well. Because in saliva, we have all sorts of different microbes that are serving our body well, because every time we chew into food, there's likely 1 or 2 elements within that food that doesn't serve our body. So our saliva takes care of it. It either digests it and eliminates it, or it pushes down the pipe to go into the stomach and then into the intestines to be eliminated that way. So there's kind of a 2-edged side of saliva. It's very key for understanding our nervous system tone, and it's very key to understanding the richness in our oral hygiene is important. And then one last caveat, and then I'll be quiet for a moment. There's great researchers that are looking at saliva as biomarkers to help give us a tune to the rest of the body. So for instance, there's a saliva researcher out of Seattle that's looking in as a way to do a spit stick and understand what risk of Alzheimer's you have. And that right now is 10 years before they see changes in Alzheimer's, I guess, formation, when you can spit and be able to see that. And then there's a breast cancer researcher out of University of Florida who's studying it to pre-predict breast cancer. So before you get a mammogram, 7 years before you get a mammogram and anything shows, we have a change in the saliva. So you can actually hopefully get ahead of the tune or the tone at that point. So
okay, so obviously, two things pop out here. Stress greatly impacts saliva production.
yes.
Stress, again, another avenue that it can impact our body negatively. And if I'm reading you right, it's not just the quantity, it's also the quality.
Correct.
How you don't have to go deep down in this, but what are
Sure.
the qualities of good saliva? And we'll get into maybe how we can increase the good quality, but what are the qualities of good
Sure.
saliva?
Yeah. Oh, excellent question. And you're right. If we look, laid out saliva on a petri dish and studied it for what's in it, we would find that it's close to 97% water, which is critical, but it's a very particular type of water. And we're going down the portal a little bit here. It's called fourth phase water. It's like gel-like, as you know, when you have some spittle. It's not exactly completely liquid. There's just a little bit of kind of form to it. And that fourth phase water is very critical because it's the same type of water in all of our cells. So it's where all the metabolic activity happens. So that's number one. It's high with water, but a very particular type of water. Second, there is 0.7% of different protein components. And then this is related to how they identify biomarkers as risk for cancer, as I just mentioned, or risk for viral infections. In fact, really after the pandemic really came upon the effort that there was so much in saliva that we could pick up different microbes that we're carrying in saliva. So that's the second component. And then the third are some enzymes, which are very related to helping digest food. And then fourth, there are some different kinds of vitamins and minerals in saliva. And as a sneak peek into the saliva world, this is really an unfolding mystery. So we don't have all the data about what are the interesting vitamins and minerals. We know vitamin D is present, magnesium is present, and a set of hormones, neurotransmitters like cortisol, which I know your listeners have learned so much from that, from the stress response from you. So all of that is contained. Now, the kicker is, I think, as a bit of historical evidence, is back in Hippocrates' days, he said saliva and blood were brothers. And at that point, the Eastern philosophy was to investigate much more in saliva. We on the Western medicine side decided to pursue what was in blood and kind of put saliva on the back burner. And one of the reasons, there's a great saliva researcher out of Seattle named Dr. Paul Slaoui, and he has said that in that saliva work, that one of the interesting parts of why it's pursued so quickly right now is the concentration of all of these elements are much less than blood. So it made sense that Western medicine went for blood first because they could get higher concentrations of some of the microbes and nutrients and things that they could pursue treatment for. Now, though, sophisticated technology has allowed us to be able to find these containers and these individual components in saliva as well. So I think you'll see a fast race now for saliva and blood at the same time.
Which makes sense. And a saliva test is so easy and so unobtrusive.
Yes. Yes.
Inobtrusive, I guess is the correct word.
Yes.
Okay, so the makeup of, if we were dealing with the four main components of saliva,
Yes.
is it the ratio of those four that makes it healthy or not, or is it the quality and for instance, let's go protein. Is it the types of protein, or is it the number of protein? Is it the ratio of one protein to the other? How, if someone has a saliva test done, say for instance in the detection of breast cancer,
Yes.
what are we looking for in the saliva?
Sure. Great question. I love to unpack questions like that. So it's interesting. It's all of the above. So not only is it the presence of certain biomarkers, but it's also the quality there, whether it's afraid. I'm sure you've done some work on telomeres, is how I say telomeres.
Telomeres would be.
Yeah, which is the end of a DNA fragment that is often referred to like on a how you tie a shoe, on that little plastic part that holds all the frays together at the end. Well, our telomeres are a way that we can see that we've aged good or aged struggled, and in it is frayed. And so they're looking at these biomarkers, whether they're complete and intact or whether they're fraying, as a way to indicate that there's some disease present. For instance, that's number one. Second, there are hijackers. So there are certain microbes that are present in saliva when you're dealing with illness or disease. And so the researchers are trying to identify us to know who's a hijacker and who belongs in the home of saliva. Okay. And that is very curious because to date, social psychologists are studying it because there's 42 different compositions of saliva they know to date. Now, it could be 65 tomorrow, but today it's 42, and it's all related to our emotional state. Oh. So, I mean, that brings up a whole another interesting area. And one that I'm excited about is in the foster care system. Kids that are brought in, as you can imagine, it's such a frightful and such a hard time. So the social workers that take them in try to assess where the child is. Is it grief? Is it sadness? Is it anger? And many times when they ask the young children, how are you feeling, or what is going on? The child is unable to articulate what is going on, and yet their saliva tells it. So social workers are very excited to look at this field of data to say, oh my goodness, that would change how we would approach children coming into the foster care system. If we could give them a spit stick and understand where their body is, and then give them some soothing ways to shift the saliva flow to be greater flow. And that I'm happy to talk about too when we talk about different ways to impact saliva. There's not only foods and teas, but there's mechanics. There's ways that we can get saliva flow, but it would allow these social workers to understand clearly where the child is to move them into a better state.
How interesting is that? I have a question on the tip of my tongue, but let's take a quick break here. I want to make sure that you have enough time to answer this particular question. When we come back, we're going to talk about, again, continue on with the topic of saliva, improving it, what it actually means as a marker for our health. And we're going to get into some interesting ideas about the health of our saliva and how well we travel. So everybody, we will be back in just a few minutes to continue on with our conversation.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. My guest today is Dr. Patti Milligan, and we're going to continue along. For me, it's a fascinating topic of saliva. I just want to put a bow on the first half, and I didn't want you to feel pinched. We're looking at, or for me, the way I've taken the conversation is we're looking at saliva tests and analyzing saliva tests as a reaction to situations, reaction to stress, reaction, as you talk about with the foster children, stressful situations. So to kind of put the period on the end of that, when we're testing at this point, saliva, are we doing it with a reactionary kind of overview, or are there ways that we can use test results and be proactive in we'll get into the immune system too, or maybe you can bring it in here too. If we get a test on saliva and it's not where we want it to be, by improving the quality of saliva, can we improve our health proactively to fight things versus reactionary to combat what's already on set? Make sense?
Yes. Brilliant, brilliant question. And yes to all of it.
Okay, terrific.
You know what? And just to, put some parenthesis around that, is first saliva was thought to be reactionary. So it was more that something insulted happened to the body. Maybe that's an immune insult or an emotional state, and the saliva recorded it. And that is true. That does happen. But secondarily, now we know that it's kind of like a canary in the coal mine, if that translates, in that when something, and I don't know if you know that story, or a rose at the end of a vineyard, if something happens to the rose, then it happens to the vines for grapes.
That's an organic vineyard.
yes, exactly. So anyway, then they identified, oh my gosh, there's something in saliva that makes a change because of the internal nature of the body that is reflective into saliva. And that's right now a big race to the goalpost to figure out if we can understand what the profile is on the internal mechanism of the body. And if I can just, hang out a wish list, I look forward to one day we will have our own spit kits at home. And let's say we get up today, Kathy, and you're going to do interviews and you just want to make sure that you're spot on. And so you take a spit kit and you spit and it shows you, oh, Kathy, you're a little low in magnesium. In order to be sharp and focused, you might want to take some magnesium. Or you had a hijacker. You were exposed last night when you were at the cocktail party, and not that it's good or bad, it's just that there's a virus present and your immune system will need to take care of it. So we're moving into being proactive, although the history of saliva research has mostly been reactionary.
Fair.
If that makes sense.
It does, and it leads me right into my next question. Can you provide that link for us between the health of saliva and how it impacts our immune system and how the immune system may impact the quality of saliva?
Juiciness of the saliva washes over our teeth. And as we have said now a couple of times, that our mouth and nose are the first exposure to the outside world. So every time we breathe in, whether you're a nose breather or a mouth breather, you're getting messages from the environment. And often that is what engages the immune system. So the first telltale is, let's say that you take in a nice breath and in it are a couple of microbes that don't serve your body. The first thing is you will produce more saliva. It will become a waterway so that it either eradicates that virus back out the mouth through little spittles. In fact, something I would talk about when I would talk to my executives, I'd be like, I hope you guys realize, but every time you talk, you spit. And it's your body's way to encapsulate things that are not serving it and get it out. So that's primary, the first way. And secondly, it is a waterway. So if we can't propel it out of the mouth, then we propel it down through the system so it can be eliminated through our natural elimination pathways. So that's the first. But secondly, so it's a juiciness that we are detecting in our mouth because there's a hijacker on board or a
So an
microbe that's
overproduction.
present.
So a day where you've got extra saliva could be an
Yes,
indication that your body's looking to rid
yes.
itself of something. Okay, interesting.
Exactly. Now, and then kind of, the opposite end of that is quite interesting because if you wake up and feel dry, that can be an indication. One, hydration does make a difference for sure. But having said that, also when you're dry, it means that your shift of your nervous system didn't go into that play, that rest, relaxation, digestion,
Ah,
rejuvenation. So it means that you've got stuck on the side of the nervous system that's all about fight or flight. And this is what we have seen over and over that impacts the immune system because when the saliva shifts the nervous system away from the rest and relaxation, it sends a signal hardwired in the brain to say, hey, we can't be fighting microbes right now. We might perish. That's what the fight or flight response is all about, is to preserve the organism, right? To preserve you.
hmm.
So we actually stand down immune system function and stand down our digestive function. Now, and that's pretty significant. So one of the first telltales I tell people is 4 times a day, just check in with your saliva. When you first get up in the morning, right before lunch, right before dinner, and right before bed. That can help give you an indication of where your nervous system is, whether you're stuck in that fight or flight, or whether you have moved into the rest and relaxation side of it. And by checking those 4 times a day, it can allow you to just get better in touch with your immune system because when you do slide into the rest and rejuvenation, you kick in immune system function and you kick in digestive function. So that is the sweet spot for the body. The body loves to go between the two sides of the nervous system all day long.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so uh, we don't have enough time for all the things that are popping into my head, but so dry mouth could actually be an indication of poor sleep.
Yes,
That's what I take away from what you are
yes.
saying. Now, if you have can breathing through your mouth cause a negative impact on saliva as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, maybe this is more popular, at least in the US. I don't know about Canada,
The mouth
but
taping?
yes.
Yes, yes.
So,
Absolutely.
and that does help preserve that salivary bath, as they call it.
Okay.
And it allows you to go between the two sides of the nervous system all night
Hmm.
long because that is key. You need to be search and destroy, fight or flight. And at the same time, you need to be in the rejuvenation, regeneration side of the immune system. Because something I say, like I said, I've been in nutrition now 42 years. And when I started out, oh my gosh, we never would have guessed that sleep would be more metabolically active than being awake. But
Mm.
more and more researchers, Dr. Matthew Walker is one out of UC Berkeley, who talks a lot about how much goes on at night. And one of them is we are constantly cleaning out our closets in our cells to make sure that we remove the trash, if you will, the
Hmm.
remnants that don't serve. We have a whole housekeeping clean for our brain, which is called the glymphatic system, which is just fabulous when it works well. And now they see in different memory issues that part of it is that we're not cleaning our house very well at night. And they are now beginning to utilize saliva techniques to improve for that.
How interesting is that? Again, this could be a whole other show. But What I don't, we're coming to, sort of halfway of this segment, and what I do not want to miss out on, because I think
Yes.
it applies to so many of us, is how you are working in the area of travel, jet lag, I guess immune function, how traveling can impact the health of our saliva, and how to, I think you said this at the beginning of the show. A lot of people, intercontinental, extracontinental, all over the place. Jet lag is a big thing. Coming home and getting sick is another big thing. What are you
Yes.
doing in this space?
Yes. Well, interestingly enough, there's a group of physicians at the Mayo Clinic out here in Scottsdale, Arizona, that do aeronautical medicine. So they do flight medicine. And
Interesting.
in it, they said, what is so curious is our saliva level drops 30 to 50% when we travel. And that got my attention. And what I realized in my research was, and this may shock people, because even if you're not a nervous traveler, when you jump on the plane, it is jet engine noise
Hmm.
vibration that sends the body into the idea. And I often relate it to a military person that's under attack. When we jump onto the airplane, that vibration sends a signal to our body. Oh, goodness, we got to stay high alert. We don't know what is going to come at the end of this flight, during the flight. So, all of that unknown. So, whether the flight is 20 minutes or 20 hours, we stay in that fight or flight. We stay stuck on that side of the nervous system. So, we don't swing into the side of the nervous system, which we've talked so much about rest, relaxation, and regeneration. So, we suspend immune system function and we suspend digestive. So what I found out was from jet lag, all the kind of the soup of jet lag symptoms are all related, that our body pulls offline, if you will, our immune system and digestive. So when we get back on ground, then those systems come back online. And so some of the wonkiness of digestive concerns are clearly that we have suspended activity. Secondly, when you are seated in the plane, the one way we take out trash, if you will, which I'm sure everybody knows, is through the lymphatic system in our body, which is our waterway of sewer. And when we sit, we don't get to eliminate our lymphatics, because the lymphatic system only moves when we move. And
Right.
when we're seated on the plane, then we build up. So I like to say we go from this delicious living river in our body to a swamp. And
Interesting.
so part of the wonkiness when you get off, when you feel tired and sluggish and headache and even irritable, all of that is that we have toxins on board that we haven't flushed the toilet, if you will. We
Mhm.
haven't been able to get rid of those. And then thirdly, I found this very critical, and I want to give him credit. It's one of the Mayo Clinic doctors who said, when your ears pop when you're on a plane, what people don't realize is every cell is tooting, it's farting.
Really?
Excuse me for being so honest. But and during that outgassing of the cells, it's extremely stressful for the body. The body
Oh,
loves harmony. And so all of those disruptions of tooting really bother the body. So as you think about your digestive and immune system functions when you travel, realize part of it is the fact you jump on the plane and those systems are suspended until you land.
interesting. Very, very. What can we do? I mean, a lot of us don't want to
Yes.
give up travel. So what can we do from a saliva point
Yeah.
of view?
Yeah. So what I studied, and this is again what they call proof of concept study. In other words, much more research needs to be done. But I found out, because, and this gets a little bit gobbledygook, so put your science hat on. uh, the nervous system and saliva are bidirectional. So in other words, I mentioned when you jump on a plane, your saliva drops, sends a signal to the nervous system, hey, we got an issue, let's stay in fight or flight. But the reverse happens. we stimulate saliva flow, we send a signal to the nervous system, hey, everything is cool. We got good saliva flow. We can keep immune system function, digestive function on board. We're all good. So that bi-directional is very key. So I designed a travel kit, quite frankly, all based on food that allows you to stimulate saliva flow when you jump on the airplane. And that's through a lozenge that is full of essential oil, lemon, peppermint, and ginger. And maybe even
Interesting.
mentioning those words, you can feel your juiciness come about
Yeah, yeah.
because they stimulate saliva. And then I did a 1-2 punch with food-based elderberry, which maybe you're very familiar, is
Hmm.
so important for respiratory immune system function. And then broccoli sprouts, which is crazy, but they contain two nutrients that help our cells flush the toilet. So as it's kind of a 1-2 punch. So you get your saliva moving, and then you get support for the immune system with elderberry and support for the elimination system with
Mm.
broccoli sprouts. So you land ready to go. And I got a patent for this as well.
Good for that. That's amazing. It really is awesome. And so I take it. So you can take the lozenges. They'd be a great travel companion for you. And as well, for the times we are not traveling, all the
Mhm.
components of your lozenge, if we include them in our diet, that would help
Yes,
for the production of saliva as well.
exactly. And there's a whole host of foods, and it's kind of a fun word to say. There's saliva producing foods, and they're called sialagogues. So
Sialagogue.
that,
Okay.
yeah, so that could be a good Scrabble word for a party sometime. But it's foods that stimulate saliva. So anything in citrus, so a squeeze of lemon or lime in water stimulates saliva, drinking lemon tea, cinnamon tea, taking foods that are umami based, or things like miso soup or mushroom soup or broth type soup are also quite stimulating for saliva. And no surprise, crunchy fruits and vegetables. So more and more airlines are aware of these aspects and are including like a little container of carrots and celery now, or cucumber sticks, because that
Ah,
stimulates
okay.
saliva flow. And then last, lozenges. And any brand, there's not any that I'm tied to, whether it's Ricola or whether it's Nature's Way or some of the more common ones. It's the suckling that we do
Mm,
when we take a lozenge that soothes that side of the nervous system.
interesting. Do babies do that sucking when they're not
Yes,
nursing because that's what they're trying to?
yes,
Wow.
yes. That I know, isn't that powerful?
That is,
In fact, there's a
I don't know why that vision came. Well, I have a little grandbaby now, but
oh
that vision just, when the babies are sleeping, they don't have a soother or anything, and
yes,
there's
yes,
interesting. Boy, the
yes.
body
So there's a
just
great
doesn't do
yeah.
anything without
I
having
know. I
so
love it, right?
interesting.
And there's a
Um,
great TED talk, really quick, if you don't mind me saying this, by
Absolutely.
a neonatologist by the name of Dr. Jill Marin. And the title of the talk is My Babies Are Talking to Me Through Their Saliva. So there's
Wow.
great work done in neonatal work now to understand what's going on in the body based on the saliva components.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. So back to the lozenges, because I don't
Yes,
feel like we've given this enough time because this is what drew me to you in the first
yes,
place. But these lozenges for travel, um,
yes.
in and of themselves, is that enough when we travel?
Well, that's a great question. I took it from a three-tiered approach in my research, which was to support saliva, support the immune and digestive function to encourage, kind of coddle those systems, if you will, to keep working. So I never just tried it with a lozenge. So I would say you can be my scientist and my guinea pig by trying it out.
Excellent. Lozenges and little gummies, they're
Yes,
pervasive in giving, health benefits. So I think it's just a brilliant idea that you've come up with. Now I have to ask you, are they
yes.
available to us here in Canada?
Yes, they are. And I can share the website if you like.
Absolutely.
It's Renewal Kit, all one word, renewalkit.com. And you see the website, you'll see all the research, you'll see the components of what's in it, and then you get a sachet, and in the sachet is the lozenge and then 2 capsules, because as I mentioned, they have the elderberry and broccoli sprouts. And I have people that are not vitamin takers. So they pour the capsule into water because it tastes just like elderberries, kind of blueberry, and then tastes like broccoli.
Oh, interesting.
So people will drink that sometimes.
So you get 1 packet, or is it you take them whenever you feel like it, or is it 1 packet per certain number of hours?
Yeah, so the research showed you take a sachet when you're going to depart,
right,
and a sachet when you land, because both ends of the flight, again, whether it's 20 minutes or 20 hours, it doesn't matter. It matters what happens while you're seated in the plane. So by bookending the supplements, it helps you arrive ready to go.
Well, we are hoping to go away in March, and everybody, I will let you know, because I am going to get some of this and give it a go. Wonderful natural product. It can't do any harm at all. All it can do is good for me. So, anyways, that's wonderful. That was such a, people come up with just the best things. It's just awesome. We are at the end of our show. I have, I keep writing down questions that I'd like to ask, but unfortunately, time is our limiter here.
Sure.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Really fun and informative. So I do appreciate you being here.
Oh, and thank you for having such interest, and everyone stay juicy and like spit goes, right?
Oh, great. Great way to sign off. Thank you so much. And everybody, we'll talk to you next week on the Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi, here on Radio Maria Canada.